Every pro 10 years from now starts their initial job with online being the anchor, probably with AI being the anchor. And the route of like where that goes, you had better not be bypassed.
You can't just be a good hitter and win World Series. You got to have the whole thing. They have to go digital. They have to be where customers are looking for them. That's going to include AI, chat, all those searches.
The message is clear. Home equity extraction's up 38% right now. It hasn't been deployed yet, and you have 2x larger pool of window and doors that will have to be done. What we're basically saying is some of them will be funded by HELOC, and whoever gets that will get a whole bunch of other dollars. That's a great spot to be.
Welcome to the Paradigm Industry Insiders podcast, where real people share real stories about what's happening with doors, windows, millwork, and life. I'm John Wheeler, and along with my co-hosts, we sit down with your peers who are moving our industry forward. These are honest conversations packed with practical insights and lessons you can take and bring value to your team. Here's today's conversation.
Welcome to the Paradigm Industry Insiders podcast, where we tell the stories of the people, products, and technology in the window and door industry. I'm your guest host, Stefanie Couch with Grit Blueprint, and I am here today with my friend from Zonda, Todd. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to join.
And it's been a wild year or so in the industry. Today, we're going to dive into some things. You got a lot of new data about market conditions. We're going to dive into that. We are going to talk about what we're calling the clash of the titans with QXO, HD, and Lowe's. And then we're going to talk about the future of the channel and the distribution channel specifically and what it might look like in a few years.
Well, excited to talk. There's a lot of change happening.
Yes. And it feels more rapid than there's been so many acquisitions and things like that. But with the influx of AI and market conditions, it feels like the stakes are pretty high right now. You told me on a call the other day, you were talking about how soft the market conditions are right now. And you've got a ton of data. You're here at Paradigm. You're going to present in about an hour. And so I'm excited to hear your presentation. But you also told me that it was going to turn on a dime. And I want you to expand upon that and tell me a little bit about what you see. What's the mirrored ball telling you?
Yeah, so sometimes you see conditions begin to thaw or change before they pivot, and I think 2025 has been the year of that. So we've had high interest rates and high mortgage rates for 3 years now. Sales have been softening and slowing, but kind of powering through until it coughed right now. What we've seen happen in the last 2 quarters is, we do a lot of work measuring orders and pricing and backlogs and all these things. Basically, pro jobs that are coming in the door are down about 20% sequentially, Q3 versus Q1. So far. At the same time, what's really interesting to see is that the high income homeowners are doing something that we've never seen them do in the data ever. Not during the GFC. Not during COVID, not during, we don't have data back in the early 80s on this, but what we're seeing happen is basically we're calling it deer in the headlights. So they're freezing up. A lot of reports of worry about losing their job in the next 5 years. So you don't do any spending, you're worried about losing your job.
Yeah.
And so we've essentially seen things freeze. In the last 6 weeks or so, we've seen builder foot traffic improve sequentially, which is really unusual. Cancellation rates have kind of steadied out, and we are seeing some indications that this kind of goes to the point about turning on a dime. There's a whole lot of deferral, which we can talk about, but there is more access being set up to accrued home equity right now. So off of a very, very low level, the equity tapped out right now this year is up 38%. Right?
Wow.
That's with a bad macro. That's with a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of it's super prime. So these are people with great balance sheet, strong income. We think that's going to start to dollarize for the space beginning about Q2 next year. It should be 3x higher than where it is right now. So a lot of deferral. That's the story. We're starting to see it, pivot now, which it wasn't pivoting over the last 3 years.
That's exciting, but it's also still scary because all of these are what ifs, which everything always is. I mean, nobody knows. No one could have predicted what was going to happen during COVID. I mean, I remember thinking the world was going to come to an end. We had just hired a bunch of people for a new door shop we were opening. I was like, I'm going to have to fire 100 people that we just hired 2 months ago.
That's a bad feeling.
Yeah, and 5 months later, we were like, oh my gosh, we need more supplies. We need more people. We don't know what we're going to do. So no one really knows. But you actually mentioned seeing possibly double-digit growth in 2027, especially in categories like windows and doors. What is the data that's telling you that?
Yeah. So we've seen this before in other categories. So let's pick on roofing.
Okay.
We're not talking about roofing today, but the analogy is really important. So if we went back in time 10 years ago, and we talked to industry, insiders about roofing, there was a feeling that roofing was broken. Housing's improving, rates are going the right direction, everything's going, and roofing's flat to down, and just not coming along. Well, what was happening was a shift in the type of things roofs are made out of, a shift in asphalt type, basically moved the window of when all these roofs were done. So it pushed it to now, 2023 to 2025. And so now we've got Depot jumping on SRS and QXO jumping on Beacon, and re-roof is significantly higher than it was during that team. What we're seeing now is basically the same story play out with windows and doors. So what windows are made of now is not the same thing they were made of, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And just some quick math. Well, I'll show a slide on this later on today. But if you just look at, the count of, say, how many homes are, over 20 years old, haven't had window and door jobs done within the last 20 years. So, conceivably ripe for a window job. It's going to be 2 to 3x historical norms by 2027.
Yeah.
So I think calling for like 15% growth sounds like a lot, but not when you've got the pie growing 2x or 3x bigger. So that's if things come together as we think they might, especially on the home equity side, we could see it could feel a bit like it did in 2021, where you can't get a pro.
Yeah.
You can't get a window that you want. So it's tough to call the timing, but the levels, the story for the levels is there.
Well, here's really how I see it is that the pros are kind of the rulers of the channel, and they're going to be the pro contractor. There's already not enough. There's going to definitely not be enough if what we're saying is going to happens, especially in things like windows and doors. Windows and doors are something you need to know what you're doing to install. It's not like, something where you can just do a DIY project that can go really, really wrong. I mean, people try and you can do it with some products, but you really need to be a professional. So it feels like with the war we're seeing, you already mentioned the roofing, people buying those companies, the same war is happening over the business with the pro contractor, and they're kind of calling the shots. Do you agree with that?
The message is clear. I don't think anything that you said is even a stretch. We can go to Home Depot's investor relations to see how they're looking at it. And, their last Investor Day presentation, I was struck by, there's a strategy slide where they say, in our base case, how we're going to grow was, we used to just grow by growing shares and some M&A and, adding some more stores and gaining some pro market share. That's there. But then their plus cases, we're going to gain even more pro market. So it's all about pro market share growth. And we're pretty clearly seeing the SRS deal as the onus of them going after the part of the business. I mean, I've seen this real time in the last few years, but we've even seen this, I think, before that. This shouldn't be surprising, where when the labor market gets tight, suddenly the builders are willing to look the other way. They won't admit it, but they're willing to look the other way if they're strained on timing. They don't want any delays on the homes. They don't want any problems with callback. What they're basically buying is a finished home with the products that they want installed without a headache. And a good pro who can do that, they can swap in other products that they want. Even no one will admit it, but they do. We've seen it happen. They can make a lot more margin. Their pricing's all over the map. That's why the pros, that's where the battle will be won.
Yeah. And even if they don't do that secondary project today, in a year, if they do a good job, they'll call back and they'll come and do their siding, or they'll come and do their roof, or whatever they offer. We did a really interesting analysis looking at this is you can't make this. This is what the data says. So let's think about that window story. So choose the number, but it's going to be bigger because we've got more homes that have to have windows done. If you take a home that needs a home improvement and you don't change anything else, but just fund it with HELOC. That's it. The chance that it overlaps with another home improvement, kitchen or a decking project or something else, grows by between 4 and 7x. 4 and 7x. Wow.
So I'll say this again. People get skeptical when they hear double-digit growth, And then I'm like, well, home equity extraction's up 38% right now. It hasn't been deployed yet. And you have 2x larger pool of window and doors that will have to be done. What we're basically saying is some of them would be funded by HELOC, and whoever gets that will get a whole bunch of other dollars. Mm-hmm. That's a great spot to be.
Yeah, absolutely. If I had a pretty big bucket of money and I wanted to go invest right now, I would go buy some older, boring businesses in the window and door installation category, and I would get them up to speed with marketing and customer service and all of the things that will make them amazing. And I would be ready for 2026, 2027, because that market is ripe for disruption. Yeah. Most of these people are guys in trucks. They're great guys in trucks, but there's not a lot of people that have that together where they have all the things to make it really be able to be scalable.
Yeah.
Well, there is so many conversations going on in the market about the Titans, but there's a lot of independents out there, and it seems scary to think about going up against Goliath 3 times, maybe more than that, because you've got BFS, you've got other people that are huge. What do you think the independent should be doing? Is there space for them in 5 years? What does that even look like?
Yeah, and that's the question that all these independents should be asking. So I think there's a place. I do think there's a place for them in 5 years. I think the place is different, and they have to adapt. If this was the Three Little Pigs, mm-hmm. So there is a group of independents that really have not adapted much. They don't have much of and even an online presence, like a 90s style website is not really an online presence.
Right.
What I would have them do, and I'm not a marketer. So there's other people that are closer to this than myself. But I would mentally imagine the next generation of pro. What we know is happening right now, Q2, we just talked about how bad the conditions are, just coming apart. Pushback orders, 20% worse than what we saw at Q1. Online revenue for building products is up 9.9%. Holy cow.
Yeah.
So that's important. And I think that they have to have a sense. There's a small independent lumberyard that I think of that is the number one distributor for things like Festool, SawStop. Well, how do they do that? They don't have any scale. But they did something right.
Yeah.
So I think they have to get super niche. They have to be really effective at a wider audience and kind of own their space. How they do that is they need people to help them navigate that. But mm-hmm. If they don't do anything, we're going to run into a situation where they're fined for 5 years. But there's the labor math on this is really clear. We're losing a generation of highly competent pro contractors that's worth a lot.
Yeah.
That loves the independent.
Mm-hmm.
Better service, legitimately so, better relationship, but they're retiring.
Yeah.
And their buddy who works at the independent or owns it is also kind of on the cusp of retiring. And then what happens? Well, he's got a 30-year-old son, or daughter that's thinking about how they want to buy, and they like buying things online. They do it all the time. Mm-hmm. And so what we just put out a report that looked at kind of who's eating whose cookie. So online shopping's way up. Mm-hmm. Where is it coming from? Okay, so pros are shopping online. Some of them are going and then converting at manufacturer direct, like going right to the manufacturer's website. Some of them are going to Builder's First Source. So they'll go and shop and they'll learn and they'll discover.
Yeah.
I don't think you can afford to not be in that early kind of top of funnel online shopping stage. Yeah. You're going to lose some. Non-zero. So
I think that's one of the things that people miss the most, especially in the independent channel, is that you can't just be thinking about the moment someone comes in and hands you their card to buy. And for me, it's really a 5-stage process that they can think of to actually continue to win and thrive. And I call it blend just so I can remember it, but it's brand. So it's being memorable, being out there. You have to be found to be able to be chosen, right? So if you're not out there, you don't have a brand, you don't have anything out there, you're not going to be found. L is leverage. So can you leverage partnerships with bigger people, like a co-op, a partnership with a distributor, something like that, to be able to be a big guy or gal without having to be one? E is customer experience. So experience. I think that is where, even if it changes from the older generation to the newer, these contractors still want the service and the experience that they know they can trust no matter how many times they order.
Yeah.
N is niche, which you mentioned earlier. I don't think they can win on every category, but they can probably win on 2 or 3 big categories that they really want to live and die by. And then D, you mentioned it, digital. So they have to go digital. They have to be where customers are looking for them. That's going to include AI, chat, all those searches, because people are already not just searching on Google.
Is there anyone that you, within building products, that you feel is doing that?
Is doing it well?
Yeah.
I think some of the bigger people are doing it pretty well. I think there's a few niche customers that are doing the niche part really, really exceptionally well. Like, for instance, I'll give you a few examples. A few weeks ago, I was at the Independent Home Improvement Conference in Orlando. I met a wild man named Pat Sullivan that owns some hardware stores, Sullivan's Hardware in Indianapolis. He has 4 stores. And when I say wild man, he is literally a comic. He has a radio show. He's hilarious. But he has niche down, so he has a lot of cool things that happen at his store, a lot of experiences that people bring their kids, Santa shops, pumpkin things like that. He has a bar and I think a lunch store in his location. He does Instagram, YouTube, millions of views on these videos they make. He's getting a buzz, so he's doing branding. He's got the leverage. He's a part of a co-op, so he can buy like a bigger person. He's doing customer experience niche, and he's online. So yeah, he's kind of hitting all of them. There's a few people that I've met through that are doing it. They're mostly 4 or 5 store chains, and they're working really hard to do it. And they're not scared to, I think one of the things is being able to not be scared to do something that might make you look stupid to all the people that are like, what are you doing? Because it is still so different. You know, I wear a pink hat and I look totally different. And there are some people that are like, what are you doing? But then there are some people that are like, whoa, what are you doing? I'm curious. And so I would rather be that way than be like just lukewarm. Yeah, where no one cares.
Yeah. So what I heard you just say, okay, I think about this more and more. So after COVID, there was this, like we all remember, there was this window where no one could get nothing.
Yeah.
You're not going to get windows and doors. I don't care where you want to shop or who you like to buy from.
Yeah.
They don't have it, you know. And if you do find someone, you're going to install whatever they have.
Yep.
Right. And you're not going to like name. And so we saw all these pros go to places that they never would have even admitted going to. We went to Home Depot. You know, we had a large single family rental developer frantically approach us and saying, like, we've got all these homes that we can't let people live in them unless we put windows in. Who can we go to? So we're connecting them with big box retailers. Yeah. And then once supply chains normalized, and they're really horrific sounding anecdotes that came in, but like the whining of, you know, I had to deal with a teenager, and I'm not trying to bash teenagers. They're great, but at the pro desk, and they had no idea about this and this and this and this and this. And so I'm so thrilled that I could finally go back to my, you know, traditional. That's why they like the pro channel. Yeah. But then they told us that every time I go to the lumberyard to buy, but I still check online.
You got to connect all the dots. And that's the thing that I think is so important is it is a lot of things that you have to do. You've got to be, it's sort of like if you were on the baseball team and you're trying to hit and field and catch at the same time, you got to be able to do all of it. You can't just be a good hitter and win World Series. You got to have the whole thing. And you also have to have bench strength coming through, because if that really great team is 50 to 60 and in 10 years they will not be there, then you're going to be toast in 10 years. And how do you train? This is something that at Grit Blueprint, we talk about this all the time. I think this is the biggest problem in the industry for everyone, the Titans and the one store owner, is when you think about products, especially like a window and door product line, or you think about composite decking and railing or something that's pretty complicated, a specialty product. Those are the things you make the most margins on, that you want to sell the most. They're also the easiest things to screw up. They have the most components, and they're coming out with new product lines every day, every year. How do you remember and teach a 20-year-old, you mentioned, you know, the young kids straight out of college that's working at a store. How do you teach them those 1 million things to remember? They also need to know the construction context by place, by region, because if I'm selling a door in Atlanta versus Texas, totally different ball game. And then they got to know how to sell, communicate like an actual human, and be able to deal with sometimes a lot of hardships, like somebody messes up something and they come in screaming at you. It's a lot of things to cover.
Yeah. No, it for sure is. If someone can master that, I think that's kind of the golden. So sometimes I think about other industries. What are the parallels to other industries? Because you do see this shift between channels and products, and it's not the same. But it's kind of worth saying out loud. I think a film. My goodness. So there was a period. When I first heard this, it just blew my mind. There was a period. This is on record in the early 1920s, maybe even to the mid to late 1920s, where movies were new and they were silent films. And if you wanted to go out, on the town and go to a cinema, the owner of that channel, that's a channel, right? The product is the film. They had so much market power.
Yeah.
They would play whatever film they wanted. It didn't matter what they advertised. They'd run it 2x, sometimes 2.5x speed, like super speeded up, so they could get more ticket sales through. About, I can't imagine, going to pay for a Marvel movie and they play something else and they play whatever the heck they want. And now we've seen that kind of swing the other way, but I don't know. Now with Netflix producing their own, being able to control. So if in-building products, maybe the analogy would be someone will crack this nut of being able to do all the things that you just mentioned and deliver a pro install.
Yeah. I believe vertical integration is actually the number one thing that people are trying to solve for. I see people already doing that. Like wood grain is a great example of that. They have a 2-step distributor platform in a few different places now. They have the manufacturing. They just bought the Towanda plant in Pennsylvania, and they're trying to vertically integrate. And I think there's a lot of people that are doing that. COVID scared a lot of people because their whole supply chain was wrapped up in, we can't get this, we can't get that. And they were just one of many that were trying to get it.
That's scary.
Yeah, it is.
It's scary too, because there's a lot more risk that you
is.
bite off. Yeah, that's the case for the big boys.
But Elon, the richest man in the world, he did the same thing.
Right.
He said, hey, why am I waiting and paying X, Y, and Z for a part that I could go get for, $500? I'm paying $250,000 because it's a rocket part, and it's just rocket parts are expensive. Let's just make that.
Elon's an interesting example because it's an example of someone who's well capitalized and who's willing to break the mold and to tear the whole process down to take a fresh look. And I think that's been the housing pain point for a long time. We're at an exciting point in time to see who does that.
Well, that's a good segue to our next conversation point, because I do feel like we have someone who's quite Elon-esque that has just entered the scene. I don't know for sure if that's a good comparison.
What a comparison. There's few human beings that's a fantastic business comparison. I think I know where you're going.
Yes. So I'm calling this the Clash of the Titans. And it feels like the last year has been more like an episode of HBO's Succession than probably the building industry has been historically in my life. It's been interesting, but not this interesting. Brad Jacobs, the founder of a lot of different companies that have gone to $1 billion, this is his 8th one, has entered the scene in the building industry in a very bold fashion, we'll say. And now the 3 titans that I'm comparing really is Home Depot, Lowe's, and QXO. You've also got Builders First Source in there. You've got people like ABC. There's several other ones. But I want to talk today about those 3. And so comparing him to Elon, he is a disruptor. He is very direct with what he is going to do. He literally wrote a playbook, which I know we've both read. I've read it multiple times, called How to Make a Few $Billion. What do you think is going on right now in the market with these 3? SRS has been purchased by Home Depot. Lowe's just announced that they purchased FBM. Beacon was purchased by QXO. There's been multiple others. GMS by Home Depot. Crazy times.
This is a really interesting time in history, I think, for building products distribution, because, 2 of these companies, Lowe's and Home Depot, are not new companies. They've been around for a lot, for a long time, almost 40 years. And yet the amount of change in their general go-to-business model that maybe we've seen in the last 3 years, that's pretty significant to look at. So to your point about SRS and what we saw happen with Foundation too, with Lowe's, it's tricky because I think Brad Jacobs clearly a fantastic, brilliant entrepreneur who has done this many times before in other industries, even difficult, like trucking and other things like that. What he needs to do is he needs to do more acquisitions. And there's a case to be made that he's not bidding. He's not the largest. He's not the whale yet. Home Depot is there, Lowe's are there, and they're actively bidding against him. So he's got to get more active. It isn't my own perception. We would have to see that. We'd also have to see him recruit and kind of set up the right team with the right tools to make the improvements that he's done in other industries in building products. He's done that. There's pretty good evidence that he's on that path.
I mean, he's hired a bunch of people from USLBM.
Yeah.
He's hired AI from Target
Walmart.
And the Walmart supply purchasing person who's very AI savvy. I mean, if people think, we talked a little bit about AI on our call we had before this. AI is not going to be like the internet where we have this like little rev up period, oh, let's see if I want to get a computer. No, it is here. And I believe there is an arbitrage moment that we have about 18 to 24 months before the entire category in any business, not just the building industry, changes. If people think they have time, they don't. And so especially for people that are smaller, they're like, well, we'll just wait and see how it plays out. You shouldn't do that. Bad advice.
I'm so excited to watch all this develop.
It is like an HBO show.
It is a little bit. So Home Depot bought a best of breed roofing operator. SRS's top scores across the board.
Yeah.
Beacon's a different animal. Beacon didn't have the same. Beacon would have been in like a 4 out of 5, rating as opposed to like a 4.9 out of 5 if it was Amazon score. We've got some data on this. And so what I'm watching for, is basically Brad mentioned he can double earnings. Double earnings. He's
also cut the vendors already from 2,300 vendors to only 20 key vendors, that's to me, I mean, I'm giving Brad a lot of credit. I'm comparing him to Elon and Steve because that's the very first thing that Steve Jobs did when he went back to Apple is he said, we have 300 products, we will sell 10. He went right back and cut the fat.
And I have a sense with their investment in AI, or at least where they're going, we heard both of the big retailers on their earnings mentioned. So the tariff wall hit, right? In April, we had Liberation Day, and then there's some initial chatter around we're going to try to do 0 price increases. No one can do 0 price increases. Maybe in aggregate, you can kind of try to swap something for another as a portfolio. That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
It shifted to being price leaders. And so what would be interesting to see is if Brad can find a way to become a price leader and prove that he can buy like a kind of good but mediocre company and double its earnings. And if you can do that, now you can buy a lot and you can go really, really fast. I think we need to see that middle piece come in. I'm very excited to watch.
Do you think there's people that just do not want him to win so badly that they would turn down a better offer from him and take one from Home Depot or Lowe's or someone else like BFS just to not let him win?
No, people that I like. I think a lot would depend on the thing that Brad seems to offer is he offers a lot of upside and skin in the game. Yeah. And I think if you become a believer that he's building something amazing, like Tesla, let's pick on Elon again. Yeah, who doesn't want a piece of skin in that early on?
Right. Like people need a purpose, and it feels like
he needs to prove the dream.
Yeah, he is selling the dream pretty hard, and I actually believe he will be successful because he's done it 7 times before in very antiquated industries. I mean, trucking, garbage, equipment. They're pretty boring, just like the building industry. I don't think it's a boring industry, but historically, it has been relatively hard to change, we'll say.
Right. Yeah, he's not afraid to move fast and break things.
Yeah.
And I think he's smart and he's hiring a very competent team. I also think Home Depot are incredibly competent at what they do, and they've got a great cost of capital, and they can foul things up. They can ruin things.
Yeah.
If they do, that's a big window for Brad.
Yeah.
That kind of is the other thing to kind of see is like how well disciplined they are, whether or not they're able to scale and kind of cross-sell what they've been doing in SR. It looks good so far.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Well, one of the things that we talked about that I think is a really interesting thing to watch play out with SRS and Home Depot, SRS has a pretty amazing leadership team.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that the data tells the same story. Yep. It's not just a gut feeling. But I'm actually curious to see, do they continue to leave that like it is? Because a lot of times when we see these acquisitions, the first few months of that honeymoon period feel pretty good. It's like, hey, we're going to let all the salespeople stay and everything's going to be good. We're not going to, the worst sin in the business, mess with your money.
Right.
And then they take these hunter salespeople, they give them rules, they make them use technology, and then they mess with their paycheck.
Right. We've seen that.
And then they say, bye-bye, and go somewhere else. Do you think that Home Depot will be able to do that at SRS and leave them to play in the sandbox like they've been doing?
I think time will tell. I have not heard so far that they've ruined SRS. I've heard that they've given them a lot of autonomy. I can tell you though that pre-SRS, we had people write in long letters, like in email form, of all their beefs about how the pros are being mismanaged at Home Depot and their perspectives on this. So I think this is probably a great example of we will see the quality of management decisions. And if they're able to not break SRS and they're able to use, like, the credit's been pretty effective so far, if they're able to kind of not break what's working well, and you often, to your point, that means being yielding, being flexible, not demanding conformity for everything. And Brad, my intuition on this is that, one, to his credit, he seems like he's willing to reward the white elephant hunters, right? So someone who goes out and does something fantastic, that's what he wants. Unfortunately, with integrations, that's usually what gets quashed. Is we want to remove cost and we want to kind of standardize, and that works in the short term, but you've killed all your white elephant hunters. So that is the question. I don't know. Well,
and historically throughout my career, I've been in this my entire life, and I've worked at some different places, and I've worked with a lot of different people as vendor partners and stuff. And I've seen mostly that decentralization is where people really win, where you can run your market like you need to. You can bring the products in that work for you. You can make the calls on the floor right there in your market. And it feels like the bigger things get, that's almost impossible to allow, because the centralization that you need to have to homogenize to be able to work at scale at a big company like Home Depot or any of these places, it also doesn't allow for that on the floor, decentralized, make the call where it matters type idea. I'm not sure how you balance those two.
I think that's the battle. You just articulated the battle. So, and I think, to your point of, like, is there a place for some of these traditional? That's where their place will be, if there is.
Yeah.
And they'll probably make ridiculous margins.
Yeah.
Do really, really well, and be hard to displace. I just had a friend. You can't make this up. I just had a friend who runs a cabinet production facility tell me that they are shipping truckload after truckload of custom cabinets in Nantucket every week. And the market's down.
Yeah.
They don't even have a website. I'm like, what? You don't even, but there is a niche.
Yeah.
And I think that'll be interesting to see. And they're able to do what you just said, just, a whole lot of like decentralized, flexible, because it's all custom.
That's how my dad ran his business. When we had a lumberyard, we were in a really high-end market. We were servicing, we live near, and we're on the lake that Nick Saban from Alabama and Alan Jackson, all those guys have a house on. It's called Lake Burton in North Georgia. So we did a lot of super high-end custom homes. And when they called, we said yes.
Yeah.
That was the business.
Yeah.
We got you, period. End of story. Whether that was in my dad's F-250 or on the lumber truck or whatever needed to happen, happened. And I don't know if a big company, they can try that. It's really hard to do that if you're not decentralized enough. So I'm curious to see how that works out. With this Clash of the Titans, we mentioned 3 people. We have not said Lowe's very often. They're kind of seen as the underdog. But you actually have some data that maybe says that might not be true.
So we spent a lot of time trying to decompose why. So Lowe's did I would say both Home Depot and Lowe's this last quarter had better top line results than at least our team expected. Way better e-commerce results than we expected. Way better, because we're seeing all this tough macro housing data roll in. What's interesting to me about Lowe's is this marketplace that they've in addition to some of the other acquisitions that they're doing, that they're working directly with home builders, which hasn't been the focus of the other two as much. This marketplace that they're opening, which is pretty much a direct challenge to Amazon. if you sell to Amazon today, you could sell a doohickey, and you probably can sell that. There used to be a lot of very clear boundaries within distribution of there's the channel products and the channel prices for pros, and that's a different thing than retail. We're seeing products that originally were designed for showroom only. Like, I'll pick on $10,000 Japanese toilet you could only buy at the showroom.
Yeah.
It's at Lowe's Marketplace right now, today. That's interesting. So it makes me get a sense that we've kind of taken the snow globe of where people play within building products distribution. You've shaken it up, and we're seeing what works, what settles out. I think the formula of what works in a down market versus what works when that market snaps, starts turning back. And if we do start seeing these, HELOC funded projects, that's a different animal. So right now it's about organic market share gains of search, landing a percentage of those, and then capturing them with whatever products that your preferred product. So yeah, it's interesting to watch. One nugget on Lowe's that we saw. So we have, this is going to be a whole new data product that we release, but we've got perfect permit data. As close as you can get to it. You could do interesting things with AI. It turns out if you draw circles around all the Home Depot locations and all the Lowe's locations, we're going to do this for like BFS and ABC and all these other ones too. But Lowe's had a better footprint. Better footprint, at least this year, despite all the difficulties. And so what I'm kind of watching for is, how much of their performance is due to like market conditions, just being around the right places at the right time, versus like these operation things that are you get the pawn to the end of the chessboard and now it turns into a queen. Yeah. Which I know that's what they're shooting for.
Well, to quote Brad, capital is a weapon if you know where to aim it. If you had all the capital, Todd, and you could aim it wherever you wanted to in one of these big businesses, where do you think the place that they really need to focus in the most is right now?
So if you put me on the management or board of one of these businesses, I would say they need to be actively measuring their draw rate among pro online touch points. They're not going to convert all of them, but that 9.9% number, I'll share that. I'm going to talk about this later on today. But the growth that's happening in e-commerce, that's going to funnel differently. It's going to funnel someplace else entirely. People were worried about Amazon just being a showroom. I think what we're going to discover is that every pro 10 years from now starts their initial job in some form of electronic, with online being the anchor, probably with AI being the anchor.
Yeah. And
the route of like where that goes, you had better not be bypassed. So I think, among that group, that would be, the single biggest touch point of, so great, your online sales are up 11% or 8%, depending on which party you're at. What's your draw rate? Where are they going? We're seeing this is my point before about some of the e-commerce pros. So not just people going online, but pros going online, shopping, and then they go to manufacturer direct, like big builders. I want to know that. Yep. That's important to know, right? Versus, I haven't heard any of those three solve that problem yet. That's where they should be spending their time, I think.
I think that's a really good point. And figuring out how people are going to be searching in the future and what they're looking for, because that's changing really quickly too. Of, long tail searches with AI, people are being way more in depth, and how it's being found is so different. I mean, I don't search on Google anymore. I do everything I search on ChatGPT.
Sure.
100%.
Take my preferred punch list for every product that I like to use when I build a home. Start there. Give me optimal pricing. Yeah. What other things can I these are all things that couldn't be done 5 years ago.
What other products should I think about instead of this one I've been using for 5 years, or, for sure.
Right.
All right. Well, one big question, I'm going to put you on the spot. If you had to pick a winner for the Clash of the Titans, who is it?
Are we calling individual names?
If you're thinking of an individual, then I guess I maybe know your answer.
So I think in terms of pure upside, QXO is interesting simply because, to your analogy before about getting involved with Tesla and Elon very, very early, if you buy the dream, you're very early.
Yeah.
Right.
And if he's right, he's really right.
I need to see him double earnings. I need to see him do that and prove that he can organically draw like this digital pro to it. If he can do that, there's a lot of upside.
Yeah.
We need to see that. If he can't do that, or if we see Home Depot prove that they can scale SRS really, really well without squishing, all of the soul and spirit, then I think it turns really quick. So I say the jury is still out, but I do believe that the dollars are there and will be allocated probably closer to like winner take all, at least in terms of margin dollars. It'll look like Apple's, share of phone revenue versus share of phone margin.
It feels a little bit like betting against him is like betting against Tom Brady at the Super Bowl. I mean, the odds are very similar. Yeah,
maybe Belichick, right? So he was good at building kind of franchises of people that were undervalued, but were willing to be there, including Brady, for the dream. Mm-hmm. So that we need to see the ring, the first one, and then probably the next ones will come. Yeah,
it's going to be a really interesting thing to watch play out. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Todd. I hope that we can watch this together, have another conversation to keep on track about where we are in the market, because it's going to be a crazy next year or two.
Very exciting. Thanks for having me. Excited for the conference, and we'll be listening in the future.
We'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for joining us on the Paradigm Industry Insiders podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platforms and follow Paradigm on LinkedIn and YouTube to catch more stories, insights, and ideas from your peers across our industry. See y'all.